Hey, hello everybody.
Hello, everybody.
Hello everybody. So breathing. Yeah, I forget to breathe after.
Start with a breath, Donal.
Yeah, after thinking for a few days and a few weeks about what we're going to talk about. When you take the drive here, a lot of those thoughts just get scattered in the wind. But on the M7, but we're hopefully going to gather our thoughts and make use of our time. It's a real honor to be here in this place, this beautiful place, which I've never been to before, in the second most beautiful county in Ireland. And hey, it's a silver medal. It's good. So
Ladies and gentlemen, Donal Dineen is from Kerry, so you have to forgive him for that comment.
but I identify as a part Cork person. So listen, yeah. So look, Lisa and I have over the past week had a few conversations about what we'd like to talk about today. I'd like to actually start about by saying that our plans kind of changed last night when we learned of the news of the passing of a master of traditional Irish music, the great Tony McMahon. And Tony McMahon is a man who, as well as being a master of traditional music, was also an incredible filmmaker and a huge influence on both of us in different ways. So we'd like to start by paying tribute to him. So I'm going to play a clip at the very start, which will feed into our conversation. And so this is about a song or about a tune called Port na Buckie. And there's a little bit of an explanation going to be at the start of this clip, and then we'll hear the tune, and then we'll get into the conversation.
In the modern world, one doesn't play a slow air which tries to touch the pulse of an individual who is maybe a bit lonely going through life. And this tune comes from the Great Blasket Island. It's a tune which was brought out of the island by one of the last fiddle players who left there in the early 1960s. And is called in the Irish language Port na Buckie, which translated means the music of the ghosts. And it's a little piece of music which in a sense shows that in Ireland, in this part of Europe, we're not governed by laws and mechanics, that we have the old religions, the old feelings, the belief that rocks and rivers and mountains are inhabited by spirits. They're not just shapes, they're three-dimensional beings often. And I think that tune, in a sense, is a lonely way of bringing that out, which is the reason I like to play it.
We might have to leave it at that because the internet, but
I guess Tony wouldn't expect us to be relying on the internet.
he
here
would he would
today, but
absolutely disapprove. Yeah.
He talks about this tune. Then he talks about the development of traditional Irish music, and that maybe it's getting a little bit too fast, and that the media and supergroups are changing, I suppose, the intention of music. Whereas he grew up remembering that music comes from a much deeper place, and when a person is lonely, it can fill their soul and really, elevate you and transport you to somewhere else. And it's great to focus on these ideas anyway, but because Tony died in the last 24 hours, we thought we have to bring him into the room here today. And unfortunately, the internet's letting us down, but that's all part of it. I think his spirit is here, and I'll go on. Sorry, Donal.
Yeah, I want to echo that because personally speaking, it's not just the music with Tony McMahon, but he was a visionary in other ways. And I used to do a thing called This Ain't No Disco with Miles O'Reilly, and that whole project emerged from a night where we discovered Tony McMahon's film of the Listowel Fleadh in 1974. And I would urge you all to, when the internet's working, to go back out and to punch that Tony McMahon Listowel 74, because what he did was really in keeping with those words that he spoke there, something about the spirit, and he was really tuned into that, and he was also capable of showing that, and that film really captures not just the music but the spirit of the people, and that's some achievement, and I think it's really important to mark his passing. Lisa, just in terms of what Portnabokie does, we both have experiences, I think, of that tune being, it is what it is. It's the song of the ghost, but it comes from the Blasket Islands. Last night, when I heard the news about Tony, friends of ours are in France, including Brendan Begley, and he was playing the tune, I think, last night in France when I was speaking to a friend of mine. But that story about him playing the tune and about, the wails and the power of the tune when it comes to what it has, Tony was somebody who was keenly aware of those powers, and sometimes he was misunderstood because he was very strident in trying to tell people how he felt about it. But, in terms of his contribution, it's like a unique one, right?
Oh, I think so. His contribution was hugely unique, not just because he was a fantastic musician who cared so much about music, but in recent years before his death, he made a documentary and he talked very openly about his depression, which I thought was a really brave thing to do. So, not only in his legacy do we have this, well of really, really rich traditional Irish music, but that he showed his human side, and he was so honest about it and admitted some not such nice things about himself, which is a really difficult thing to do. But with that, he's leaving us with this this human side to him that's within us all, and we're all capable of having these dark days, right?
Mm-hmm.
And but not everybody talks about it. There's light in that, I think.
I think there's something kind of unique about the way he did it, in that it was really at the end of his life, where he was already 80 when that documentary was made. But I suppose there's a lesson to be learned there about it's never too late to say that I am like both things. I am good and I am bad, and I have done amazing things and I've also done bad things. And I think that when I see people tell that or say that, honestly, I find that very reassuring.
I do too.
It's a yes or no situation. It is though, right? Isn't that what
it's reassuring to see the many different experiences and
to be given the information generously by anybody who it's what it's all about, right? To be able to pass on the knowledge that you've gained on the path.
Yeah. And to visit the different seasons of the mind, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
I was inspired after listening to that little interview we tried to play for you there. I don't expect it to move everyone the way it moved me. That's not what it's about. We're all moved by different things. But I wrote a song in response to it, and the song is speaking from the point of view of a note in music that's buried, and it's saying, with the music industry, maybe I'll stay out of that, and I'd rather sink back into nature and be within the bird song and maybe within the soil somehow.
Mm.
So,
well, would it be good to play it now, or is that
I'll play it now if you would like.
Yeah. I think it's a thumbs up.
I played for Tony McMahon this evening. And if you didn't know who he was, you do now. Did I tell you what the song is called? Old Note. The wind whistled you in behind the springtime. Float, old note, new among my mind. You hold the note just moves the movement. Let go the note and so move everything. I can't come to quantify the feeling. I was walking home half in a dreaming. The things that I was thinking I was singing. The wind whistled you in behind the springing. A star ran a rings around a star before me, and a spun and swooped and sank and rocked beneath me, and mirrored what I've carried since I met me, and it shot me back into the ground below me. And there I met another note long buried, and it sat upon its shoulders was a memory. I hum but see above me's gone so noisy. I almost think I do not recognize me. Feathered friend, dig up and resurrect me. I long to live among the song of birdies, a lawless league of lonesome, lonesome beauty. Skies and skies and skies above duty. The wind whistled you in behind the springtime. Float, old note, new among my mind. You hold the note just moves to move man. Let go the note and so move everything.
What a perfect song to sing in tribute to the great man Tony McMahon. So this is a quote from him. Music sends shivers up your spine when it sharpens and quickens both spirit and emotions to the point where the individual lonely heart is at one with the eternal harmonies. Thank you so much, Lisa. That was beautiful.
You're welcome.
We had planned to kind of start by talking about the different take, I suppose, an hour out from the stresses of modern life to talk about how we cope with the stresses of modern life, and with the caveat that we're far from experts in any of those fields. But I suppose when it comes to how we both operate in that department, we're lucky that we live in the north inner city of Dublin, and we share that space, and we meet there, and I see you a lot. In terms of like going out in the daytime and your daily routine, Lisa, I know I see you jogging and stuff like that. Is that something that you've discovered in the last while, or where did that kind of come into your life in terms of a thing to do on a daily basis?
Well, jogging. jogging. I think I started going for a little jog in the Phoenix Park maybe about 7 or 8 years ago. But because up until this pandemic, I've never had an opportunity to have a proper routine when I'm at home, because you're kind of always waiting to go again. So the jogs were happening when I was kind of home for long enough to build a little 2-week routine. So since this lockdown, it is something that I've managed to hold on to nearly every day. And my life, we've all got a different kind of way of life, but mine was a little all over the place and ungrounded because of touring a lot. So, you know, it's important, no matter how strange things are, to look at the positives, and that was one of the positive things. And the little jog I do is about 15 minutes every morning. I'll do another run around the park if I'm feeling extra energetic, but it's the consistency instead of trying to. I see people out there timing their exercise, and I think it's just about keeping a movement going. I do breathing exercise every morning as well, and there's a Native American chant that I like to listen to when I'm stretching, and there's a real force in it. It's real positive as well. So no matter how low one might feel at the beginning of any day or any time in the day, these are things I grab when I'm feeling like that, and it brings me back around to myself.
Do you feel that sort of activity of, you know, getting the blood moving, we've been talking about this, about how, you know, when you get stuck, and an awful lot of the problems that we all experience or have in this modern world is that it's very easy to get stuck. But the actual physical activity, or any physical activity that will get your blood moving, I think we both feel that that's something that has had benefits that we can definitely, you know, count on a regular basis.
Yeah, get the blood moving. Hello, heart, I'm alive. You also have to go outside to do it as well. So it's like hello day, hello trees, hello sky. No matter what's going on, and because it is easy to think that one day runs into another, and it's samey. It's samey if you let it be samey. You know, I think having a plant or two around, or 10 or 100, is a wonderful, beautiful thing as well, because as long as it's growing, you're minding that, and then it comes back around to minding. These are simple things, but everything begins with the simple things, you know. And the colour to the plants as well is very stimulating for the eyes. And
it is the simple
maybe
things.
this seems boring, but I mean, you're asking me about my routine and what keeps me going, and I do get down. I'm all right with admitting that these days. I think it runs through a lot of my songs, but a lot of us do, and I think it's worth talking about how we speak to ourselves. It's a powerful thing, you know, the inner dialogue. We don't realize often that I didn't. Growing up, going to school, nobody ever spoke about how we speak to ourselves. This voice that's inside, that's there all the time. We've got total power over that, and it's great to remember that. And so if I'm being a little bit hard on myself, sometimes I've got this thing going on where I say, hey, you know, when I pull her back, that not so good, Lisa, not so bold, you know. I was talking to a wise man last week, and I was telling him about bold Lisa, and he was asking me, what kind of things does bold Lisa do? Destructive Lisa. Destructive Lisa might think at 2 o'clock in the morning, of course you want to stay up and smoke another cigarette. He asked me what age bold Lisa was, and I thought, oh, I don't know, I think she's about 10. And he laughed, and he said, really, how old is bold Lisa? Think about this. And I said, I think she's around 14, 15. And he said, that's interesting. Why don't you bring her into your day with you today, and invite her in, and remember, she's not the only Lisa in there. I guess recently I've come to realize that we can have a map of emotions within us, and if we decide what that is, and we can change all the time depending on what's going on around us in our environment, and address the different parts of ourselves, because there's always a good Lisa in there as well. and a sound Lisa, as well as the bold Lisa and the destructive one. I have to stop saying my own name here.
I can't pronounce my own name, Donal. But no, the thing is, what you're saying there about how you speak to yourself, Lisa, the words we use when we come to talk about those problems is also something that we were gonna talk about, and one of those is straight away the word mental and how that has connotations. Growing up in the 1970s in the most beautiful county in Ireland, when the word mental was associated with the mental hospital, was used in a way that was like other kind of forbidden words would be avoided, or would have very negative connotations. So therefore, I think that is kind of problematic when it comes to how we discuss these matters, because language is very important there, same the way it's important how you speak to yourself, right? So I think we both feel that there's kind of a discussion to be had around the use of that word.
The use of that word, the use of there's stigma with this term mental illness. Those two words are quite sharp together, aren't they?
Yep.
Mental health, even. Sometimes I think maybe mind health might be a softer way of looking at it. We all have a mind, and we all have this place that we need to look after. So you might not be up against it a lot, but there will be times in life where things are tough and have to kind of really, really mind it. But the language isn't great around it, the stigma. Even when you think about psychiatric hospitals are called mental institutions. And I think that's tough for people. They even say if somebody goes into a psychiatric hospital that they've gone downstairs, but they're going in to fix what's going on upstairs, and it just doesn't speak well to me. It's a good thing if someone's gone into a psychiatric hospital because they're working on something.
Yeah, there's a potential for change in there as well.
And then there really should be no difference in looking after an injured foot. Or an injured wrist, than there is looking after an injured mind. And of course it gets fractured from time to time,
Yeah.
So
there was, when we were in the last couple of weeks, Lisa, one of the things that came up was your research into Jonathan Swift. And so a fact that I didn't know about, I spent a lot of time around St. Patrick's Cathedral, one of the most special parts of Dublin. So well aware of his legacy, but not the detail that he was responsible for, the beginning of mental health care, essentially, and of institutional care. And not only that, but he came at it from an angle that was as progressive as any, the type of progressive mind that we need right now. He had it at the time. And maybe we could talk a little bit about his approach to well-being and health.
Yeah, I'd love to. And those minds you're saying that we need now, we have them. We have them all around us here, because what Jonathan Swift had first and foremost was imagination and love for others. And I don't know an awful lot about him. I haven't read Gulliver's Travels, but I will, because I've only discovered recently from a lecture that I watched by a man who is professor in St. Patrick's Hospital in Dublin, St. Patrick's Hospital for psychiatric care. And it's fantastic. And there's so much in it, So the history of mental health in Ireland. In the 1600s, Jonathan Swift was the Dean of St. Patrick's Cathedral in Dublin. And all the money he had, he put towards opening this hospital for mental health, because not only was he the first person to instigate opening a hospital for mental health in Ireland, but he was the first to bring up the conversation that it needs to be addressed within society. And that was in the 1600s. And that's wonderful. That's really a beautiful thing. And it did come true, not while he was alive, but later on. And just some of the things he said, he was a writer. So his motto was Dr. Diet, so eating as much fruit and vegetables as possible, and that was seen as crazy at the time. Dr. Diet, Dr. Quiet, mindfulness. Talking 300 years ago here. And Dr. Merryman, humour. So to bring humour into things as well. And he also said that we've enough religion in the world to hate each other, but just not enough to love each other. I mean, everything he said was huge and said a lot. And he did do something great for the people of Ireland and instigated opening a lot of hospitals. He would have been instrumental in the opening of Rotunda Hospital, which was the first maternity hospital in the world. So he was all about the people, and we need those people in society who are looking outwards, outside of themselves, and to those around them, and to see that there are people suffering around us all the time, and sometimes they just need to be looked in the eye and seen, literally seen. Oh, you see me, okay, so I do still exist, or heard. Sometimes they just need to talk. They don't need even advice. They just need to be heard.
And as well as that legacy, then he also wrote what is generally regarded the greatest novel of all time, Gulliver's Travels. So he had what a remarkable man. I love that idea of the religion of just enough to hate each other. But isn't that kind of sums it up, doesn't it?
It does sum it up. Yeah, we have to be careful with religions, I suppose, and respect them at the same time.
Yeah. When you talk about looking somebody in the eye, and when it comes to people who are ill, but not just that, but when it comes to like where we live in the North Inner City, and it's a difficult, it can be a very difficult place to be, a hard place to be, as well as being a brilliant place to be. And the best parts of New Ireland are evident there, but also the toughest and most painful aspects of city life are there as well. Just from the point of view of how we react to people on the street who are in trouble, and there's a lot of those people. I think it's important to say, and I know you feel this way, Lisa, about that thing of looking that person in the eye, or at least giving them the time, that amount of respect, which is the bare minimum. But again, it could be very meaningful, and very often, I think we've talked about it, the effect is usually very positive, because
the effect is so positive. I mean, living in Dublin, especially in the last couple of years, in the north side of the city, poverty is worse than I've ever seen it, and I'm in Dublin 22 years. It's very sad to see a lot of children on the streets and on nasty new drugs as well. They're afraid of themselves. So people are begging. I can't afford to put my hand in my pocket every time, and when I can, I do. But to just respond to someone as they speak to you, especially when they're on the ground. It doesn't matter whether they're on the ground or standing up. They're addressing you. So it's understandable to be nervous about strangers addressing you, but just to turn around and hear them and say, hello, and I can't help you today. And every single time when I meet one of these people in the eyes, I'm meeting a child. It doesn't matter what age they are. They look frightened, and they thank you. Thank you. Thank you for answering me. And because to ignore someone, we have to, I think, in society today, take on a little bit of responsibility and realise our ability and our part in just walking out the door, the everydayness of it. It's quite a violent thing to ignore someone. And it's a very, very easy thing to just nod at someone, look them in the eye, and you can keep going. You're still safe, So I think that's a really important thing to point out. Not to get the conversation too heavy, but I don't feel okay talking about mental health in Ireland and ignoring that point and that fact. The more and more I read, I'm getting this feeling there's talk that Ireland is a wealthy country. That doesn't really add up for me when I walk through the north side of Dublin at the moment. So we can't ignore that. There's something not right there, and I hope that our politicians stand up soon and do what they could and should do in 2021.
I suppose it might bring us along to something that we've been talking about all this week that's happening in Dublin, which is that there's there's two Dublins and there's two Irelands, and there's an Ireland that where the culture is as strong as it's probably ever been, and then there's an Ireland where it seems to me anyway, that's taking advantage of that. And what we're talking about is a situation that's been happening over the past week where the centre really of a very sacred place when it comes to music, the Cobblestone in Dublin, is under threat from developers to build yet another hotel in a place that doesn't need any more accommodation. But not just that, but the irony of the situation is that they're building a hotel to attract people to a thing that they're destroying by building on top of it. So it's an absolute scandal, right? And I suppose it's something that we feel it's important to be said this week.
Yeah, I mean, the protest is happening in Dublin today, but we came down here to do what we were down here to do, and bring the word down. I mean, our culture, you know, we value it so much. It's so rich, this place, to be able to come down here and be welcomed in, and come down with your stories and your songs, and you guys welcome us, and the same, you know, to just travel around this country, and every corner has its own character and wealth of art and so many different mediums, but none of it would exist without the wombs that it grows and is born in. So some of these spaces we're talking about are really important. They're sacred. We're talking about even Mojo Records in the temple in Merchants Arch.
Yeah.
That'll be going if the hotels get their way, and the same with the Cobblestone, a womb for so many musicians, tunes, songs. And if those places go, well, sure, what's the point? Like, what will the tourists have to come and see? And also, but for us who live here, they mean so much to us, and they're not gone. And we will fight this as a people, because they mean so much to us. And St. Patrick's Cathedral, where Jonathan Swift started off, was a sacred well 800 years ago. Mm-hmm. They're all sacred wells. This place is a sacred well, and we will not roll over and let them build another hotel. It's boring, like, and it will. It's. I look at it right now. It's embarrassing and it's laughable, but if they get their way, it will be very depressing, and we don't need that. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah, no, it's time to stand up, because it really is the last straw. It's been happening for so long. There's a disconnect there between, like, how, you know, what's meaningful and how that operates in terms of the world of art and music. I feel that, you know, when I go to, so last Sunday night, for example, was the first night. Just to put you in the picture, the Cobblestone has a bar, but it also has a live room that has been the scene of so much important stuff over the past number of years. And it's been an open door for places like, for instance, a fact I learned this week, you know, Traveller Pride Week, they had been refused 15 different venues before the Cobblestone opened.
Travellers are always welcome in the Cobblestone, everywhere.
And that says it all. And, you know, like a touchstone of our culture that is not able to celebrate itself elsewhere is welcomed with open arms there. I'm personally a person I'm a human, but I know I don't drink alcohol, but I've never been, I don't really go to at bars ever, but the Cobblestone is a place that I've always felt very comfortable, because Tom Mulligan's a great man, and a great man with a free cup of tea.
He's a pollinator.
Yeah, and it is about that. It's a fostering, incubating place. And so last Sunday night, the night before Larry got stretched, this incredible singing circle that is kind of like, I suppose you could say, like a Child of the Goleen, which is another sacred singing club in Dublin. So on Sunday night, I went along just on my own and sat in the back of the room, and I listened to all of these amazing singers in this room and this powerful feeling in that place. And then 48 hours later, I read this news, and I think that there's just the fact that it's that if it wasn't, it's just too absurd to almost believe it, but it's true. So that's why we have to make the point today. But I think it's been made now. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Donal.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think, like Lisa said, you know, it's when it comes to, I suppose, making objections, it costs 20 quid to object right to Dublin City Council. I do know that, but the uplift thing is free, so it's also an effective way of doing that. We're going to move on to talk about somebody that we both love dearly, Lisa and I, and that's a man called John Moriarty. So when I think of, I suppose when it comes to my own ways of coping mechanisms, even when things get so bad that music doesn't reach me, and it does sometimes get that way, it never gets so bad that the voice of John Moriarty doesn't get through. And I think he is somebody who, a writer, philosopher, a man who was an academic, was in UCD in the late 50s. I read in his obituary that him and Tony Ryan were the two star students of the late 1950s there. But he went on a different journey. He could have been the chair of English at Oxford University, but he went and taught in Manitoba University for 7 years, and then felt that he wasn't on the right path, and instead came back to Ireland and took the path of walking the land endlessly. So, Lisa, maybe you might tell us how you feel about him and how what he means to you.
Because today we're here to talk about mental health. I hope you're all aware of that coming in here this evening, and that this doesn't seem like the bleak midwinter.
The dancing's later.
I don't honestly remember when and how I found John Moriarty, but his voice is so soothing. He was for someone who had a heart. He was at odds with the world because he really believed that our outlook isn't great. He was worried about the planet, but he was worried about our kind of spirituality and that we'd lost touch with it. And I think there is some truth to that. But one thing he did say, there were so many things he said, but I like this, and it's simple. He said that hopelessness and despair, it's not an option. And I think that's true. You have to look at it that way. It's not an option. But I can't really quote him now. You've got a few things here, Donal. No, you're gonna give them a taste of John Moriarty.
Dig you out there. Well, I don't have a few things no longer because of the internet. But the thing is, I do have one thing, which is Mary McGillicuddy, his friend, talking. Right. So
yeah. So John Moriarty died, I think, in 2007, and he was so positive about it. Like he was saying, I don't believe that this is the whole story. Life on Earth is not the whole story. Life in this universe is not the whole story. I will live on. And the simple fact that we're speaking about him here today, he has lived on in a very positive way. We're after going through a tough old time, folks, and we're doing really well, I think. And I found him really helpful. He's right. He did live on. He was here when we needed him, and he continues to be here. So Mary McGillicuddy is his friend, and she seems to be continuing on his work, and she knows he's needed at the moment. So she's reading from. She did a really good talk there last year, and I think Donal has a bit of a snippet from it. I hope it doesn't get lost on you. I hope it's not too out of context.
To heal and to save are at the core of his extraordinary journey, and to those two verbs I would add another: to understand. To understand, to heal and to save, both himself and the world in which he found himself, and with which, for the best part of his life, he felt so much at odds. And it was no easy journey. He suffered that journey. He struggled with despair, with nihilism, with meaninglessness. But extraordinarily, what shines through in his writings and in the talks he gave at so many venues around the country is his sense of hope, the humanity of his enormous and generous spirit, and his sense of humour. He battled in himself with an extremely bleak vision of human behaviour and its catastrophic effect on the planet. And instead of giving up and saying that requiem mass for it, he went to war with all the forces that he diagnosed as destructive. The Aborigine he once said about himself, is fighting back. And towards the end of his life, even as the cancer that killed him was ravaging his body, he could say, how sad to be any age, 9 or 90, and not want to change the world. So, with his example before us, and even in the light of Extinction the Facts with its bleak message, we must accept that hopelessness and despair are not an option for us. We must take a leaf from his life and examine both his diagnosis of the modern world and his prescription for it. Firstly, the diagnosis. Modern humanity, he said, is destitute humanity. I mean, we are living in a wasteland. And to provide an image for that, he told of opening a cupboard in a house he had just moved into. And there on the shelf were spuds that had been left there for God knows how long, he said. And those spuds had desperately sprouted. They were white and gaunt and shriveled. And they were on a dark shelf, hopelessly shooting forth. But there was no soil around them, and they were totally cut off from the sun.
So that gives you an insight. I think there's...
they had been cut off from what nourishes them.
He says something about when he left Manitoba that he wanted to seek his bush soul. I think Mary kind of touches upon that there. And he also was illustrating about what was going on in his life and why he knew he had to change. And so he illustrated it by taking the interviewer to a rhododendron bush that he had put in a pot bag a year earlier. And he was talking about the roots there and about how, within a year the roots are going to spread so far around and out. Whereas if it's in an enclosed thing, that it just turns in on itself and becomes, kind of chokes itself in terms of the roots. Mm-hmm. And I think it's, again, like the potato metaphor there, but it is a really good way of putting it about how, that works and when it comes to we as humans in the world.
Yeah, well, we can think outwards. He had this term he called the silver branch perception.
Yeah.
I mean, and that quote where he said that, to be 9 or 90 and not want to change the world, like that we as single human beings have the ability to make positive change like that.
Yeah.
and think outwards. I hope I haven't lost what you're saying there, Donal.
No,
I think
that's perfect. Yeah.
He just had a really, really beautiful and huge scope.
Yeah.
Beautiful outlook. And yeah, I think we got lucky with the few quotes here, and we'll not drag you through any more quotes this evening. But
yeah, look
just
here, look
trying to kind of focus on the few heads who really have given me and you great encouragement through times where it feels a little bit like it's tough going,
He puts a lot of emphasis into your relationship to the natural world, and I think in my own experience that those sort of grounding experiences, whether that's done in a fleeting and occasional way or whether you're lucky enough to be able to do that as a way of life, but if you don't do it or you can't do it or you never do it, it has an effect on the body and undoubtedly on the mind, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, we just need movement to continue. We need movement in our lives, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like constantly.
Yeah.
And it's something maybe I think a lot of us missed during the lockdown as well, that we were restricted to just being around the same few people, and so lucky to be around those few people. If you were lucky too, you know, some people living alone and they didn't have that. Mm-hmm. Over time, as we start to open up and get this freedom back as well, I'm feeling that change and movement of energy, of other people's energy coming back in to my life, and I missed it so much. It's part of me. Yeah. It's part of my own growing. It's part of our own essence. Is the essence of others. Yeah. Moving through us, it'd be that your mates or people that you just met at a concert last night, or just someone in the post office, someone who served you in the shop. It doesn't matter. It's all the little things, you know.
Yeah. And it's about that flow of energy. That's what
Flow,
it is, right?
yeah.
When it comes, we'll say to music, and we're going to hear another song in a minute, Lisa. The moment of coming back into it, and this being one of those where there's an opportunity, or it feels like there's an opportunity because of that break, where where maybe the artist can do things a bit more on their own terms, or that the relationship between the listener and the artist, or the performer and the audience, that there's a new kind of power in that connection, or we have to. Do you feel that? I mean,
I do, yeah. Not to go back from what you're saying there, Donal, every day is an opportunity to change, but this pandemic was so loud and so obvious to us that it's a massive window for change coming out of it, you know.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of us were in a rat race, which we didn't have total control over, and we were just going with it because that's the way it's always been. And now we're starting again, and I guess there are a lot of people asking, does it have to be like that as we slowly start again? Could it be a little more, less of this and more of that? Slower. Life could probably be a little bit slower as we go back. I think John Moriarty would say, you know, we need to stop every now and then and let our souls catch up. We can leave our souls behind us. I really do believe that is possible. But first of all, you have to believe you have a soul. Yeah. I do.
You certainly do. Are we going to go to Violet Gibson, or what do you feel about?
I forgot
singing
about
out?
Violet Gibson.
Well, just to check, right? We're going to do. Are you going to do the Globe at the end?
How many songs can we do here, Donal? I feel if we go down Violet Gibson's road, it could be a little dark.
That's fine.
I want to consider everyone in the room here, and
Maybe will we talk about I Am a Writer?
Yeah.
Okay, Lisa. By the way, I'm very lucky to call Lisa a friend, and I also know the extent to which Lisa is one of our great artists, and in terms of a writer, I think somebody who it's a measure of how great it is, the actual intention and the amount of work and research you put into each of your subjects. When it comes to Mr. Griffith, what's going on with your research there and with Arthur Griffith?
Oh, well, I'm not ready to talk about Arthur Griffith, but I am researching Arthur Griffith at the moment, who was founder of Sinn Féin and responsible for signing the Irish Treaty. But his work is bringing me into Jonathan Swift and James Stephens and all these guys. Maybe that's the link. Is that what you're talking about?
No, actually, it was about I Am Writer, so I got it wrong.
So written by James Stephens. But all these guys were friends.
Yeah.
And we're talking about people who were here 100 years ago. You know, in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and they're people of their day and thinkers, and they had their finger on the social, or they had their eye and their finger on the pulse and on the social problem. And they were all mates, and I find that really beautiful to find a piece of writing from one person and then another from another, and realize these were people who were hanging out together. So James Stephens, and we will talk about Arthur Griffith someday when I'm finished my homework. James Stephens was a wonderful writer. He wrote The Crock of Gold, and a beautiful man. I'm still finding him, and wrote some beautiful poems. And the reason why I wanted to tell and sing this little poem today is because, you know, Donal, when we were initially asked to do this, my thought was, and I hear a lot of people saying this blind boy says it as well, and I get it. Who am I to talk about mental health? But with that, who am I to talk about anything? Well, I'm I. And we're all just an eye, you know, and we've all got a brain. So I think we are all able to talk about mental health and should be able to talk about mental health. We can all only really speak from our own experience. So, I mean, here today we're doing our homework and we're digging into people who inspire us, you know, so that this doesn't turn into a self-gratification exercise.
Oh God, I was hoping it would be.
James Stephens, anyway, wrote these very smart little poems that I think people are still figuring out today. And they all loved him. And he was a tiny little man, even smaller than me. He was 4 foot something. That's really small. Because I'm 5'1" and small enough, like, for a fully grown woman. But the reason why I hope you haven't lost me. The reason why I wanted to play this little one for you today is because it kind of is saying I'm a writer, but it's actually called I Am Writer. He leaves the A out of it. I am writer. And he's kind of saying, I know nothing. And I can't be right, I can't be wrong, I can just try. So listen to the words. I'll read it to you first, and then I took the privilege of trying to do what I think he suggests and do. Play with it. You know, what do we call recycle? And you know, 100 years after he wrote the poem, it's still with us. That's why art is so magical. It kind of is infinite. It will live on after us. And if we've got little keys in there, suggesting to the children of the future, try me. This is like a little puzzle. Open it up and play with it and give it new life. That's what I tried to do with this little piece, which may be lost on you. And even if it is, that's fine, because it's not lost on me. This is a Shruti box. It originates in China, but it has become very popular in India, and it's a very simple little instrument, and it's helped me understand music better. I am writer. I am writer, and do know nothing that is false or true. Have only care to take it so, and make it sing, and make it new. And make it new, and make it sing. And if it's pleasing unto you, say I've done a useful thing, as your servant ought to do. Mick, are you going to come down on this? I am writer, and do know nothing that is false or true. Have only care to take it so, and make it sing, and make it new. And make it new, and make it sing. And if it's pleasing unto you, say I've done a useful thing, as your servant ought to do. And make it new, and make it sing. And if it's pleasing unto you, say I've done a useful thing, as your servant ought to do. Thank you, Mick. That's
Thanks,
Mick
Mick.
Garrity. I guess with that, as human beings and as writers, I think it's very important to look at the idea that we have to be all right with getting it wrong.
Yeah.
We won't get anywhere if we're not all right with getting it wrong. We can't please everyone, but in a way, we are sort of servants to each other,
Yeah.
as long as we're pleasing someone else. And you're never going to please everyone, and we
Yeah.
need that freedom injected back into us again. We'll never learn anything if we're not all right with getting it wrong. And I'm a little bit worried in this new politically correct phase that people are not exploring anymore. They're afraid to open their mouths
Mm-hmm.
because they're going to get in trouble. And we're students, pretty much all of us in this life. We're always we have to get it wrong in order to get it right.
I think that's a really important thing to point out, Lisa. While we were talking last week, something came up. You mentioned social, or I think you mentioned the times we live in, but something very symptomatic of the times that we live in, and the pitfalls and the dangers that we have to attend to in this modern society. So, when we were talking on Tuesday, I think it was, the cover of the Irish Times had a photograph of a woman called Aileen Malone, a mother who had lost her daughter Dara Quigley, and you may not be familiar with the case, but sometime in 2017, Dara Quigley, a writer and an activist, just found herself in a distressing situation and was on the streets of Dublin, naked on the streets of Dublin, was I think possibly arrested, but was definitely picked up by the Gardaí. Unfortunately, I'm not exactly sure whether it was the guard who filmed it or took the CCTV, but either way, it's the lesser of whichever two evils, because the image of her was sent to another person, and the other person shared the image of her in her most vulnerable moment, and that had grave repercussions because she took her own life a few days later.
Yeah.
Now, the horror of that, and we're bringing up something very painful, but it's symptomatic, I think, of the times that we live in. I just kind of want to comment as well on the beauty of the mother's strength that I saw in that photograph, and her resolve was very evident.
Yeah,
And
her mum's bringing it to court now, and
Yeah.
Really, whatever episodes Dara had that day that she did find herself distressed and naked on the streets of Dublin, it was filmed, and it went out there, and she couldn't live with that. Now that's where we as a society have gone wrong. People have to be able to get distressed, and we
Yeah.
have to be able to help them out and not be afraid of them, and reach out a little bit and ask a girl, is she are you okay? Could you do with a little bit of help? Things could have turned out very differently, but because of the camera, everything's been filmed these days. It's not a good thing. Our reaction to pick up and film something when it's happening and evolving in front of us is it should not be top of the list. You know, there's more to us than that, and sadly, that's the way it turned out for that young woman, that young journalist. But hopefully, with this movement and her mum fighting the cause, and the media drawing attention to it, that it won't happen again or anytime soon. Because, the positive side of it is that we have to look at that young woman's experience could change a lot of situations moving forward. You know.
Well,
but
I think
yes,
it's
social media and the camera everywhere.
Yeah.
This shouldn't become normal. I think the sooner we get on top of that, the better.
I think the hope would be that it would lead to legislation that would, that would be able to prosecute somebody in this regard. I do
But
think
it's not okay to film someone.
it is absolutely not okay, and it's absolutely, to do so when it's quite obvious that somebody is in need of help, and that it's got nothing to do with the cheap titillation that happens when you share images. But I think, the point I was making at the start is that we have to really ask ourselves, have we lost control completely when somebody who is there to uphold the law and to protect the citizens is actually also falling, like
Taking out their mobile phone and
yeah.
filming something.
Now we're
that
all
seems like theatre to them.
yeah, we're all fallible and gullible in that sense, and that I guess we all do that in different ways. But in this case, such an extreme example, but an important point to point out, I think. So Lisa, we're probably going to go to our last song, if that's okay, and maybe we could bring the discussion back around to what this one is about. So I was lucky enough to see you play a few weeks ago back in the first show back in Dunleary, and so I'd heard about this song while you were writing it, but it was absolutely beautiful to see it realised as a song. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about what this last song is about.
Yeah, well, it's a simple little one, and eventually it was written in about 10 minutes, but it took 39 years because it was a little key to something, and I haven't really played it live much yet, so it may not translate it. So again, it may not work for others, but it did for me. And through my songwriting, so I started writing songs when I was 8, and it's obvious to me now that I've been writing just to explore and find answers to things that I have questions about. And if afterwards someone hears them and likes them, then that changes what they are, and I say, okay, then I'll play it for you, or I'll put it on a record. But this one again came like that for me, and it's very simple and innocent almost, but my whole life I always felt a little bit outside, like standing outside looking into the world, and everything that I love and do and see other people do, and I do it a little bit but not fully anything. And I had got this image in my head as a child of what is the world. And I remember if we would ever talk about a country might come up like Africa, say, and Dad would take down this globe that we had, or point at the map on the wall. We had a map of Ireland on the wall in school, and we had the globe at home, and he'd take down the globe and he'd spin around and say, that's us here, and that's Africa there, and that's America over there where your auntie moved to. And I used to think, right, but that's not the world I live in, and I don't know how to get in there. And I never knew how to get in there. I couldn't access it. And last year I had a hard time, like, I felt quite isolated, and I dug deep in my thoughts, and at one point I felt so disconnected from the world. And it was at that point where I found a map of my county, an old ordnance survey map, and I was able to see exactly where I was from on that map, and I was never able to read a map, and finally I understood. Now I know my place, or where it was, but at that point I'd lost myself from it, which was the key. And I thought, I finally understand. I've been here the whole time. It was the world. It wasn't that globe that they took down off the shelf. I'd been in it the whole time. I just wasn't diving in. And by the time I realised it's time to dive in, my self-esteem was quite low. And I thought, this is not fair. But I built it back up again. And I wrote the song, which is called The Globe.
I just want to say thanks to Kevin Shanahan. Thank you, Kevin, for inviting us to have this discussion, and to 49th North Street. It's been a real pleasure to be able to do this, and I hope my presentation... I was channeling 1% Tubridy. Did you notice that? It might be a bit too much, but... Thank you very much. And by the way, this discussion will be on a thing called Make Me an Island, which you'll find in the cloud.
Thank you, Donal. Thank you so much. It's a funny thing we do, isn't it? We live right around the corner from each other, where we take a 4-hour journey to come down and talk to you. So I hope it was okay. And that I've never tried to explain that song before. So I hope it's not lost on you, and that the song's always better than the explanation. Okay, nice to see you all.
The incredible Lisa O'Neill.
Oh, stop. Halfway through, yeah. When I was small, 2 feet tall, I thought that the world was a map on the wall, that globe of a ball we'd spin and explore, but that world showed no door to me. Feet and in lore, I learned to read about the globe, and through the windows of my eyes I sang the blues and green. I touched on things one only sings when they found the key, and still the world in all my awe showed wholly old. I've paved some road. I'm taller than I'll ever be. I've learned things I cannot sing. I spin relentlessly. I plugged out of self in doubt, in so misplaced the key. Then lo and behold, that cruel old globe went showed its door to me. Thanks, everybody.
We're going to hear more from the amazing Lisa O'Neill later. Thanks to Mick as well. And thanks to you all for being such a lovely audience. And thank you. I'm also a recovering DJ, and I'm going to continue my recovery later. Thank you.
We know